everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Zzzax of Life podcast, Zzzax of Live podcast, a Marvel podcast from Laughing Place. That's the full title, by the way. I don't know if you're
with the sorry and everything.
Exactly. Actually, as we start that way, I want to just quick peek behind the curtain as we start these things. So we're still getting used to the live format for the podcast, and when I hit the countdown, when I hit start to actually begin the live broadcast and then hit the countdown, the video doesn't play right away on my end. So I'm just staring into the camera, and then the countdown comes up and it's like 24 seconds. So it's just 6 seconds of me staring into the camera, and I never know if it actually is working or not. So I'm glad at least it appears that it worked based on your reaction.
Yeah, it's usually it's confusing. I think it's an internet thing. Yeah, sometimes I'll hit the button and it takes a couple seconds to catch up. But I got the full countdown and then a little shot of us and then the
that's what I'm trying to avoid too, is that little shot in between. But it's hard to time it up based on the countdown not being as on time on my end. Anyway, we are going to be breaking down the latest episode of Secret Invasion this week, as well as some Marvel news, and then we have a returning guest joining us later on for a fun Marvel draft, as well as How Much Is That Cameo.
When's the last time we had a non-returning guest?
Ooh, that's a good question. When's the last time we had a guest on for the first time? I feel like Rebecca has maybe only done it once. No, she's done it twice, but maybe the first time she was on, that might be the last time we had a first-time guest.
So probably the listener.
Yeah. I think the listener is probably our only one-time guest. Because even Bill's been on a couple times. So Edith we had on once.
That's true. My friend Carolyn.
That's right. Yeah, Carolyn was on for just the one time. We got to get some of these guests back more because I mean people got to be getting sick of Doobie by now, right? Like,
especially Rebecca.
Well, yes, meaning Rebecca is getting sick of Doobie, not the people are getting sick of Rebecca.
Yes.
Let's see. We've got Kevin in here saying Disney did well at with the Emmy nominations this morning. Secret Invasion, Ahsoka will get Emmy nominations next year. I would imagine so. We talked about how Secret Invasion has been one of the best acted Marvel series so far. So I could see that happening. But we are going to be talking about some other Marvel news, not so much the Emmy nominations. We want to start off. Oh, yes. And thank you for putting that banner up there. I do want to mention the shirt that I'm wearing has been provided by Roosevelt's. We have an X-Men themed draft later on. So I wanted to support Roosevelt's, get the X-Men out there. So thank you to them for providing this awesome shirt. Let's start off with some Marvel news. First year. Actually, I'm just laughing now because we talked about beforehand how we were going to, mention that Roosevelt's provided the shirt. And Kyle went ahead and discreetly put up the banner. And I said, I should mention it, out loud because this is a podcast. It's an audio format. So how else are they going to hear that I am mentioning it? They're also not seeing my shirt. So, that's...
I don't know, the FTC, they'd be like, I could tell you're wearing a free shirt on this podcast, and I think that listeners deserve to hear about it too.
Exactly. The FTC won't let me be me. Usually that's Kyle dropping the Eminem lyrics, but today it's me.
Speaking of Eminem, do you ever just have a day where you're like, man, that Just Lose It is a terrible song. Like, it's just like little parts of it get stuck in my head. I'm like, this song is terrible. Why?
I can't say that's one that comes into my head very often. So no, I don't. I'm going to have to go back and listen to it now though. So anyway, all right, let's get into some Marvel news. Although unless you want to bring up Eminem's Venom song again, because that would Marvel.
It'll probably happen.
No, so we're going to start off with the big story around Laughing Place the last few days here, which is that Benji and Alex are on the what is the full name?
Disney Parks Around the World, a private jet adventure. I don't know if that's right. That's close enough.
Yeah. So it's definitely very close if that's not the exact name. So they are on this 24-day trip that takes them to all of the Disney parks around the world, as well as
going to all the destinations around the world, but mostly California.
Yeah, this is what, day 4 of their trip, and they're still in California.
4, and I think they're in San Francisco again tomorrow before they finally head over to Asia.
and then they will end in Orlando. So kind of funny, kind of bookended by the least exciting parts. Although they've gotten to do some really cool stuff so far, which expert level segue into our first story here. One of the stops they made on, I think, their first or second day of the trip was Marvel Studios. Second day of the trip, they actually got to tour Marvel Studios, which is a rare occurrence. People don't often get, it's not just open for guests to walk in. So it looks pretty cool. We have photos up on laughingplace.com right now. You can head over and check those out.
I think my favorite of those was they had a She-Hulk Kevin display.
Yes, that was pretty cool. Although it looked like it was, I couldn't really tell in the picture. It looks like that was just on a wall, like a sort of like a mural type of thing. So that was really cool. There's also one of my favorite details that they had in there was the heads of the various monsters from Werewolf by Night. Because that was one I saw it on the morning show yesterday. I think Doobie was asking, he was like, "You're a Marvel guy. What am I looking at here?" It's such a minor little detail that they throw in there. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And one of the things they didn't get to take photos of and isn't necessarily associated with Marvel. I wouldn't be surprised if Marvel takes advantage of it or will start taking advantage of it. But they got to see the volume, which I think for most laymen that we were first introduced to this existence of this technology from The Mandalorian, specifically the Disney Gallery, the making of that first season, where they're like, oh yeah, a lot of these things, like these are shot, but then we film in front of this giant like video screen, and you're like, what? That looks pretty legit. So
and I'm so curious what that experience was like, because it's largely just a room that's surrounded by a giant screen. So when you walk in there at first, you would assume it's probably just a very plain room. And then I'm sure they turned it on and showed them some of the backgrounds they've used. I think Marvel has used the volume for Quantum Mania. Am I
okay?
Wrong?
No, that's probably, I mean, if only there were an assembled I could watch, that might give me more insight into that.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we are still waiting on the Marvel Studios assembled on Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. I believe I remember seeing that they use the volume for some of those quantum realm shots, which would make sense. It's that kind of technology that allows the actors to be transported to those crazy, unrealistic locations. So I'm really jealous. I think Doobie mentioned this too on the morning show, that this was the first thing in part of their trip where everyone on the team was kind of like, okay, now I'm jealous. Like that is the thing I want to see. That would be really, really cool to see.
Yeah.
All right. So outside of the realm of what's been going on with LP the last few days, we did get some really exciting Marvel news a couple days ago. And that was an image shared by Ryan Reynolds of him in his full Deadpool costume. And more importantly, next to him, Hugh Jackman in full Wolverine costume, but not a familiar Wolverine costume in terms of live action, a very animated series-esque Wolverine costume, the yellow, some of the blue in there. It's just a really, really cool look. I am so excited for this movie. What did you think of the costume?
Yeah, I mean, I figured it leaned from I mean, I haven't, not the most up to snuff when it comes to the X-Men. But to me, it reminded me a little bit of the animated series, even if it's got definitely more pleather than spandex. But yeah, no, I thought it looked cool. Definitely a different direction for the character from what we've seen before. For one, he was wearing a shirt, and yeah, looks cool.
Hugh Jackman's a little bit older now. He might be wanting to wear shirts more often in his movies, although still, I wouldn't. But Huge Jackman continues his storied career. So yeah, really excited for Deadpool 3. Can't wait to see him return as Wolverine. I mean, he said it was for the last time, but I feel like, I don't know, if the popularity of this movie is just through the roof, I could see him coming back and just being the MCU's Wolverine. Perhaps we'll talk a little bit more on that topic later on with our draft. But speaking of Deadpool 3, there was some exciting yet more unexpected news regarding this movie. We have another returning Marvel actress, in this case, reprising a role that, I mean, to put it nicely, nobody asked for. Jennifer Garner, don't get me wrong. Love Jennifer Garner. She is great. She's fantastic in those Capital One commercials. But she will be reprising her role as Elektra, which did you see Elektra, Kyle?
No, I've never seen. Actually, Becca watched 2003's Daredevil a couple weeks ago, but I don't think she proceeded to watch Elektra 2005.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think this is interesting. I personally hope that the Hulk gets involved so that we can have a 13 going on 30 reunion. That's or her and Nick Fury can have a Capital One What's in Your Wallet off.
We get a Charles Barkley cameo. That's all I need. Yeah, I believe it or not, there are Marvel movies that I have not seen, and Elektra is one of them, for pretty obvious reasons. The Daredevil movie I did see, of course, it's not good. Jennifer Garner, though, I think is great. Speaking of reunions that we could have in this movie, if you're just gonna keep pulling Marvel actors from old movies, Ben Affleck returning as Daredevil, I think would be on the table. Could be an interesting reunion there as well. But yeah, I am excited. The obviously humor is going to be a big element of this movie, and Daredevil, traveling through the multiverse of previous less successful Marvel films sounds like such a hilarious premise that I am completely on board for. So the more of these reprisals and cameos that you can throw into this movie,
Deadpool kills the the Marvel non-cinematic universe.
Yes, that would be fantastic. I would love for some sort of angle on that comic series to happen. Also, by the way, I just want to mention while we're on this topic, I would have loved, I believe her name is Elodie Young, who played Elektra in the Netflix Daredevil series. She was really, really great, and that Elektra was fantastic. So I would love to see that happen too, but who knows where they're going to go with this in the future. I don't know. But regardless, excited for Jennifer Garner to be showing up in the MCU in the near future. Jumping out of the MCU, jumping into the world of video games, we got an interesting announcement. The bigger announcement really was that EA, the Electronic Arts, the big game publisher, announced a new game studio. I guess I'm not a big gamer person. They call them AAA studios. So it's more of like not an indie studio, obviously, if it's run by EA, but it's sort of like a smaller studio within a studio situation.
So it's a farm system? Is that why it's AAA?
I guess that's kind of the what they're playing off of there. But so they announced their new studio, Cliffhanger Games, and their first game is going to be a Black Panther game. So not a ton of details about it just yet. Obviously, if it's just being announced, we are years away from it hitting stores.
Years away from it being delayed.
Right, exactly. You're probably right about that. So we got plenty of time before we get more information about that. Lots of Marvel games coming before that, like Spider-Man 2, for example. So plenty of exciting things happening in the world of Marvel gaming. And again, I will segue that into the news that we got a new expansion announced for the Marvel Multiverse role-playing game, that tabletop Dungeons and Dragons in the world of Marvel that we have been waiting for, and has also been delayed quite a few times for a game that just involves dice. But so that will be coming. The Spider-Verse expansion will be coming in 2024. The Marvel Multiverse role-playing game should be coming soon. It was supposed to be coming this month, so we'll see. You will be hopefully seeing something about it because you're heading to what is it, Gen Con?
Gen Con, Indianapolis, next month.
Not to be confused with Jennifer Con, where Jennifer Garner will be, reprising her role.
Or Jennifer Connelly. I'm going to be at Gen Con, so I'll have to keep an eye out for this. I do know most of the stuff I'll be doing. Lorcana, the Ravensburger Disney-themed thing is going to be the big thing there.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a villainous tournament, so I'll be checking that out. And I'm also going to watch some speed puzzling because that sounds fascinating. But I'm sure there'll be some Marvel stuff there. I have no idea what to expect. I'll tell you, I already underestimated this thing because when I went to try to go find hotels last week, I was in for quite the surprise. Yeah,
so Gen Con, apparently a lot bigger than what we expected. And And we don't know that you'll be getting anything from the Marvel Multiverse game, but I would assume if there's a big tabletop,
I mean, even if they're just promoting it,
yeah.
there'll be something.
Maybe the rule book will be for
I'm
sale.
there for 4 days. I will find something.
Will you be participating in any speed puzzles?
No, I am spectating only for those things. That's the other part of it. I'll tell you, when I'm like, I have a badge now. What does that mean? Because this is definitely different than like a Comic-Con or something where it's about just going from panel to panel. It's like, okay, now you have a badge to be on the premises. Now sign up for the stuff you want to do.
Yeah,
the tournaments you want to participate in. And I'm like, yeah, that's not me.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to your coverage of that event because it's such a different type of event to be covered. All right, last bit of news, and this will lead us into our Secret Invasion discussion. We had a new character sighting in Avengers Campus in Disney California Adventure, and I say that literally. I mean, we literally just had a sighting of this character who did not come out for meet and greets that I'm aware of. At least I didn't see anything else from this. It was really just a video from, I want to say it was D23 that shared it originally, which was interesting.
Yeah, I think it was for their special preview of Rogers.
Right. So there was a Skrull dressed as an usher for the Hyperion Theater, which was pretty funny, and just kind of wandering around, like sweeping up trash and things. And so it was a funny little video. I would love to see them do more with this in the future. It's such a fun idea to just have. I mentioned in our write-up of this, which you can check out on laughingplace.com right now, that we think it's the first time we've seen a Skrull in Disney California Adventure. We don't know for sure. Yes, there's a lot of fun things they could do with that. So I'm hoping this is just the first of many sightings.
Yeah, that'd be funny if like you're at the front of the line and you see a supervisor go ask someone to go get something, and the human leaves and they come back as a Skrull. Or even about
it. Even just do it as a completely different person. Like you could do that with characters too. Like just have Nick Fury leave and then come back as somebody else. Or a lot of fun things they could do.
Although you don't want guests trying to cut off their fingers to find.
Very good point. Yes. No, please, no maiming the cast members. All right, are you ready to get into our discussion of Secret Invasion?
Yep. Let me put up this banner, and then we'll put up the other banner.
Are you actually putting up the banner, or do you want me to do it?
Oh, you can do that. Okay, I figure you probably have it.
Yes. So from this point on, as long as this banner is on the screen, we will be discussing spoilers for Secret Invasion. If you are listening to the audio podcast, there's no banner for you to see. So hopefully you saw the episode by now. So
should we make like a little beep when it's time to turn the page?
Well, no, because that wouldn't help because you can't be listening for the beep.
They heard the beep. They turned off. I know.
All right. So I want to say first, this was a shorter episode of Secret Invasion this week. We got I think it was a 34-minute runtime, where the previous episodes have been like 48 to 50 something minutes. So almost more like, closer to that half-hour runtime, which is pretty interesting that they decided to mix that up, and definitely caught me off guard because this episode ended and I was like, there's no way it's over already.
I mean, it ended where I thought it would end, but I'm like, then I looked at the runtime. I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah, it just felt very quick, and that's because it was. So I want to get before we get into the story details of this episode, I want to get your feelings on where we're at with Secret Invasion so far.
I guess I'd say that this feels like, especially because we only have 2 episodes left, that this is just going to lead into something bigger. Like it seems impossible to try to wrap this up at this point, which I think I don't know if we were hoping for, but expecting to some degree. Obviously some of the things that we discussed were confirmed in this episode, so that was good. But then just like last time, we also have more questions, and that's the questions usually how long. So yeah, I really like this episode. I was surprised by aspects of it, and interested to see what this means, because like I said, I'm kind of giving up on the idea that this is going to be a standalone story.
Yeah, that's the interesting dynamic that we deal with every one of these Marvel shows, right? We always talk about this when there's about 2 episodes left. How are they possibly going to wrap this all up? And this was the show. I mean, even last week we were saying we don't feel that. Like it feels like it is very self-contained and it is kind of getting to a conclusion. And now this episode, to me, I don't know that I feel like, going into the WandaVision finale, it felt like there was way too much for them to wrap up. This series with 2 episodes left, I don't necessarily feel it to that degree, but there is still a lot going on for sure.
Well, there's a million Skrulls. So I feel like now that we know that, and given what's happening, that even if this issue is contained, that there's still going to be a greater thing out there that we're not aware of.
And I always expected that to be the case for sure, that they weren't going to wipe out the Skrulls in this 6-episode series. I will say though, I think this episode, and this tends to be the case with any show, not just the Marvel shows, but this episode to me fell a little bit flat. I mean, it had a big moment at the end, but it felt kind of, we're now more than halfway through this series, 2/3 of the way through this series, and quick math. My wife and I discussing it immediately after the episode, we were kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Like this show hasn't really hit us with that big moment that, that Moon Knight episode 4 or that Pietro showing up, at the door. So it feels kind of like, I still expect them to have a punch left in the last 2 episodes, but I don't know that it is as exciting for Marvel Comics nerds like me, as I expected it might be.
I feel like it's more subtle. Like to me, Rhodey, and obviously we saw it coming, but the fact that Rhodey is a Skrull is a big deal. Now it makes you want, but it's not just like the reveal itself isn't that exciting, but it's when your brain starts thinking to what else that means. So I guess in that way, it's just more of a slow burn.
Yeah, that's a good point. And there are like the repercussions of the show, but it's also wondering of how much those repercussions are going to bleed out past this show going forward, because it could very easily wrap up and then they're just like, it doesn't matter. Like Rhodey was a Skrull for 2 weeks and now we don't have to worry about that anymore. So it's going to, depend on what happens, not just in the next 2 episodes, but the projects going forward after. And I think we know this is going to lead pretty much directly into the Marvels. So like I said, I think there is still a punch or two that this show is going to be hiding in the next couple episodes. But let's break down what we learned from this week's episode. First, starting with, one of the questions we had last week was, do we think Gaia is actually dead? We pretty much laid out exactly what was going to happen, that she used Extremis and she immediately healed from that gunshot from Gravik. And so she is still alive and will be going forward for who knows how long, because as we learn later in this episode, there are still plenty of consequences to be dealt out.
So I suppose that means that we're to assume that Gravik doesn't know that Gaia.
I think that is the case. Yeah, I think that's where we're at right now, is that Gravik thinks. I mean, he even tells Pagan that he took care of the mole.
Yeah.
So so I think it'll be a surprise, and that sort of be a card, an ace up the sleeve for Fury and the heroes to play later on. We also got our answer, our further confirmation. We were, like you said, pretty sure that Rhodes was a Skrull. But also we got the confirmation that he was in fact the guy on the phone, that I feel like was an unnecessary mystery that the last episode laid out for us, because you hear the voice and you're like, that's Rhodey, but why does the closed captioning say man on the phone?
I don't know. Why did you discuss to the podcast audience about your shirt? Sometimes that's just how it goes.
Fair point. I don't work for Marvel though, so that's
I don't. Well, to be fair, I don't think the people captioning it do either.
That's a fair point. That's a good point. So anyway, we get the confirmation that Rhodes is a Skrull when he goes and meets with Priscilla in the church. That's the meeting they set up in the last week's episode, and he reveals that I think he says something along the lines of like, you're supposed to do whatever Gravik wants, and so outs himself as a Skrull right there. But then he points out that he is the one who fired Fury, which is news to Priscilla. And he says he didn't just fire him. He DDT'd him from the top rope, and then said it was Undertaker level of ethics. I just need to clear this up. The Undertaker does not do a DDT from the top rope. In fact, very few people really do. That's a very dangerous move. So just had to throw that out there for my smart marks.
Hold on. We can't just. We have a button for that.
Now, just a minute.
Yeah, there you go. So closest thing would be old school. He walks the top rope. He comes down with an elbow. It's fine. Whatever. We don't need to get into specifics. But yeah, so we know that Rhodey is a Skrull now. We know that Priscilla was working for Gravik, which goes back to your iPhone theory pointed out last week. So but Priscilla was not. I mean,
a couple weeks ago, I think. Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, a couple weeks ago. But in more ways than one, Priscilla was not who we thought she was necessarily. There's also a dynamic going on with Talos and Gaia. Gaia, we find out is still alive. She meets with Talos, and he is very apologetic, says that he shouldn't have ever brought her into this. And she is very much like, no, this was all me. Like, I wanted this fight. And but then she brings up that, you have to have a plan because Gravik's plan is working. And so you have to have, if you're not going to go with the violent ways of Gravik, you have to have a different plan to go to. And he reveals that he hasn't changed his plan since the beginning of this show. He very much wants to go with exactly what he laid out for Fury in episode 2. And that's not good enough for Gaia. She also, like Fury, doesn't believe that will work. And she wants specifically a new planet. She wants to be able for them to live in their own skin, as they keep saying, to not have to disguise themselves as humans. And so, there's still this tension between Talos and Gaia.
Of all the tropes, where does people in movies and TVs just yelling the name of the person instead of like going after them rank?
That's true, because he does just sit there calmly on the bench while yelling out Gaia.
It's like me trying to get my brother down for dinner. Like,
yeah, you would think this would be a little bit more urgent. You thought your daughter was dead, and now she is back to life, and now she's leaving you.
I can't possibly leave the gravity of this bench.
So yeah, there's that interesting dynamic with them two going forward. And I feel like we're at this point already like halfway through the episode and almost nothing has really happened. But this episode was also very well acted and very intense scenes between two. Like there was Talos and Gaia. There was Rhodey and Priscilla. And then we have Fury and Priscilla in this, what I thought goes back to the meeting between Talos and Gravik, and then the scene earlier with Talos and Fury. These one-on-one scenes that are just, it feels like a masterclass in acting between these two, going back and forth. So I thought this was a really powerful, not quite emotional, but it draws you into get you invested in them as a couple in the very little bit of time that they spend on it. And so I thought that was very well done, but at the same time, not a whole lot happened, aside from the fact that Priscilla is supposed to kill Fury. Fury thinks he's going to have to kill Priscilla. They shoot at each other, but intentionally miss. By the way, I think this is going to be a huge controversy going forward. Who shot first? Fury shot first? Priscilla? Which one? I think that's going to be a big topic of discussion. Just kidding. But, would be an interesting thing to break down and compare to Han Solo and Greedo.
I have a question for you. Did you think, speaking of the format of the show, did you think it was weird that this one had I have the ad-free version of Disney Plus, but there was a commercial in the middle of the episode?
Yeah, I did want to get to this because you made this joke before. And we get this meeting between Rhodes and Fury. We full on see now that Rhodes is a Skrull. We see him, which too much Skrull showering in this episode for me. But we then see that
a female Skrull. Was that
okay. Which is it, and another interesting dynamic. That's something you don't,
or whatever the equivalent of female is for Skrull.
I don't know, but yeah, that's the Skrulls could be anybody really. So, so you get another really good scene between Don Cheadle and Samuel L. Jackson, Rhodes and Fury. But yes, also they are drinking their Rip Van Winkle bourbon.
Happy Van Winkle.
Happy Van Winkle. You're right. I'm sorry. Yes.
Which is if you know it, it's not a liquor that needs to be advertised because it's anyone who is into whiskey knows about it and seeks after it and idolizes it, dreams of it. And so it's just kind of funny that they have this, he does mention that it's $5,000, which is probably not wrong on the secondary market. But yeah,
right. Well, I think he says that like if he dumps out that $5,000 worth of it, and which I think that might be overshooting it by a little bit, but yeah, no, you're right. Very expensive bourbon they're enjoying, and definitely got me excited to have a glass of whiskey before bed tonight for sure.
Your Apple Jack Daniels.
No, it's peach Sir Ellington's now. So that is
okay, much better. See, that's why this to that is like us doing this podcast versus Benji and Alex on the trip right now. That's exactly the difference between your peach whiskey and
the Pappy Van Winkle. Yeah, I'm not exactly drinking $5,000 worth of bourbon tonight. But yeah, so Fury meets with Rhodes. He wants to get his job back, but at the same time, you can see that that's not his real motivation. We see the Fury we see in this episode, at least until the very end, is one who is much more in control and much more the Fury we're used to seeing. So I liked that the development of the character with these 4 episodes. You see that he is kind of a step ahead of the game again now, and he has information that people think he does not. So I liked seeing Fury with a little bit of that power again.
Yeah, like in that scene with Rhodey, just the way he got that kind of like sarcastic swagger to him.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect way to describe it, as sarcastic swagger, which I think is that was your nickname in college, wasn't it, Kyle? That was sarcastic swagger. Mm-hmm. So we get to the big sort of set piece of this episode, which is the attack on President Rizin from Gravik and his army of Russians, because the whole idea is that he's making the Americans think that it is the Russians' attack, again, starting this world war. And this world war that apparently only involves America and Russia, at least to this point. But I guess we'll have to see how Gravik's plan goes. Talos and Fury conveniently show up after using a liquid tracker that they put in the Pappy Van Winkle, which I thought was a pretty fun little piece of like spy tech to throw in there.
Yeah, maybe fun spy tech, or maybe people who are going to look at that and use their confirmation bias to think about other things as if it was real.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But we get to the whole big action sequence. And again, this is, not a ton to break down from this episode, because there are these long conversations and then there's this big action sequence to end the episode. And so the attack on President Rizin is almost successful. They flip his vehicle a whole bunch of times.
Codename Citadel.
Codename Citadel, yes. Whether or not that will be important in any way, I'm not sure. But he survives the attack, but is kind of pinned down in his vehicle and unconscious. And so Fury and Talos go in to save him. Talos gets shot and starts transforming back into his Skrull self.
I liked this effect, this like dying, you get more Skrull-like as things get more dire. I thought that looked really interesting.
Yeah, it looked really, really good. And, for Marvel has taken some criticism for some of their CGI in recent memory. And that to me looked really, really well done. And then also plays into the whole dynamic that Fury and Talos have been discussing in previous episodes, which is that, the humans, there's no way they will accept the Skrulls and be able to, coexist. As soon as a soldier sees, Talos as a Skrull, he immediately points his gun at him and Fury has to talk him down. So that kind of plays out Talos's plan right there. So then, their attempt to rescue the president continues. Talos breaks into the window. Fury saves the president, pulls him away, gets him. Specifically, a soldier tells him, put him in my vehicle, and he says, "I have my own ride." Fury clearly not trusting that soldier, and then we see, I think it's the same soldier, goes and saves Talos, then reveals himself after Fury shoots him to be Gravik in disguise. He stabs and seemingly kills Talos. And Fury then shoots Gravik in the face, but sees that the Extremis heals him. And so then all of that sarcastic swagger that we had build up for Fury is gone in an instant. And you see him like just complete shock on his face as he watches Gravik be a super Skrull in front of him. So
Also, like the way he had to, he looks at Talos' body just standing there, and he has to drive away with the president, and that's tough moment.
Yeah, the closing moment of that is him having to decide, does he go back and save Talos, risking the president's
probably
life?
Not save, like he's probably gone, but still just
Right.
feels like
Exactly. Yeah, and so he drives off with the president, and that's where this week's episode ends. And like you said, it felt in that moment like, yeah, this would be the end of an episode, but at the same time, in my head, I'm like, there's no way we are at the end of an episode already. This went by so fast. So yeah, it was a little bit shocking. There was sort of that big moment in the end, but to me, not quite as like punchy is the word. Like to me, like I don't feel like shocked. Like this is a huge discussion point that people are going to be talking about, like we've seen with some of the previous Marvel shows.
Yeah.
Jeremiah does have a comment for us that the Pappy Van Winkle goes for $5,299.
Yeah, the 23 year.
Yeah. So, but I mean, he does specifically say, like, if you pour out the little bit that he has poured, like that's $5,000 worth of.
Well, I didn't take it as that. I just took it as him saying of this, $5,000 bottle.
Okay. But yeah. So, what are your feel? I mean, we talked about at the top of how do you feel now that we've discussed this entire episode and now having 2 episodes left? Like we said, we have a lot to close up.
I mean, it felt short, but I thought that it was made up of good scenes, and I thought it was interesting dynamics. So I think based on what you're saying, I think I enjoyed it more than you did. But yeah, we also got the one thing we didn't really mention it, but because we saw it in the trailer, but we do see Gravik use his brute power. Yeah. And to me, I was just like, oh, you just kind of gave yourself away. You're supposed to make this look like Russia. You're speaking Russian and everything, but you don't think somebody's like, oh wow, Russian soldiers have tree powers or something like that. So that part seemed to like a little bit weird to me, unless he's just hoping that nobody saw. But that was the only thing that kind of stood out to me. It made me kind of scratch my head a bit.
Well, you got to remember too that they're living in a world where a new terrorist organization has some sort of super soldier serum every other month. So
true.
It's very possible the Russians have just developed some sort of serum for themselves. This show, and actually my whole point about what I was saying, looking forward to something more exciting with the Skrulls and stuff like that, kind of summarizes the problem that, that I personally have and that I think Marvel Comics fans in general have. And it's not a problem that we have with Marvel. It's a problem we have with ourselves. It's that we are watching these things to look forward to what's next and to expect that big jump into the larger universe, as opposed to enjoying the show that we're watching. And I try to balance that a little bit, but every now and then, I'm catching myself getting excited for the possibility of, whatever could come out of the Secret Invasion leading into like the comic storyline or anything like that. And so it's, I am enjoying these, like I said, these incredible scenes between these fantastic actors. But it's you kind of have to step back and just enjoy the show for what it is, as opposed to looking forward.
Just enjoy the show.
Exactly. All right. So that is going to do it for our discussion of Secret Invasion. Do we want to get into our games, or do you want to talk about
we'll save that. I think we can get into our games.
All right, let's get into our games then here. Make sure our guest is ready. I see him down there. So here we go. How much is that cameo? All right, so before we get into our draft this week, we have another round of How Much Is That Cameo? And joining us for I don't know how many times now is Jeremiah.
Do we have the banner or the yeah?
I have to adjust it for you. Hold on.
For those listening, Jeremiah is also wearing a Roosevelt shirt that was provided for him.
My shirt is Grimace.
Oh wow, that's as close to a horror shirt as you will wear these days.
Do you guys know I know the voice of Grimace? I'm gonna try to at Comic-Con. Yeah, he is also the voice of Donald Duck.
Wait, like okay, that makes more. There's more of a connection there then. Okay, Jeremiah,
Thanks for being bumped last week.
Yes, yeah, thank you for that. Sorry about these scheduling conflicts we had here. But before we get into how much of that cameo, I believe. Oh no, we did talk to Mike C about it a little bit last week. But you did also get to see Rogers the Musical. Real quick, what were your thoughts?
Loved it. It is definitely worth the trip to California. If you are a Marvel fan, Mac, I hate to say this, but you need to go see it before it goes away forever. Lots of fun. The music is great. I did talk to somebody that I know that is in the know about possibly the soundtrack and everything coming out, and he said maybe. So
I hope they wait until our video stops getting views so that it does get demonetized.
That's a good point. All right. So Jeremiah, you've been on the podcast again a bunch of times. You know how much of that cameo works. Kyle, who's our cameo this week?
Well, let me show you this person's delightful intro.
Hi, it's me. I'm the problem you see. No, I'm Zenobia Shroff, and this is my cameo profile launch. Most of you may know me as Muniba Khan on Miss Marvel, and I'm here to say hi. And if you want a personalized message or a shout out for your birthday, or you want me to do some sketch comedy, which you can see on my other platforms, or just have a chat, I hope you reach out. Looking forward to connecting. Thank you.
That's right. That is not just misquoting Taylor Swift, but Zenobia Shroff. She played Kamala's mother on Ms. Marvel. And yes, I love that intro. I think it's fantastic. But anyway, my question for you is, how much is that cameo?
Well, I was listening to the intro. I was going to say, I love it when, these celebrities start listing all the things they can do on Cameo. And then they're just like, why am I doing this? Like halfway through, they start to tail off and just like, or whatever you want. I think this is the first one that offered sketch comedy, though.
Yeah, that you could see on her other platforms.
Yeah. So I'm very curious now how much we have to pay for some sketch comedy from Muniba Khan.
Because that could be a possibility just for the sketch comedy.
Yeah. Let's find out here. Jeremiah, do you want me to set the bar here, or do you want to go first?
I'll set the bar. I'm saying not too much. I'll go 75. Okay.
Mac.
Listen, the sketch comedy is giving it a bump. I'm gonna go $150.
All right. Then today's winner is, winning both showcases, Jeremiah.
Wow.
I like how he celebrated before I even said it. He knew that guess was perfect.
Very nice.
It was 75 exactly.
It was 75. Wow. That's why you win both showcases. Yes, sorry, I didn't explain that.
$75 for some sketch comedy from Kamala Khan's mom, I think, is something this podcast might have to invest in.
We could get her to do a sketch comedy bit to send to Benji and Alex as they arrive in somewhere.
Yeah. I just want to have her reenact skits from I Think You Should Leave at this point. I think that's probably...
You sure about that?
We might have to pay extra for some of those sketches. I don't know. All right. Are you guys ready to draft?
No, not at all.
Well, we're doing it anyway.
What if I told you we were putting a team together? Assemble.
You need to extend that like one more half a second.
I know. All right, so we are going to be drafting. We've done this kind of draft before. We did this with the Fantastic Four. We may have done similar things with this before too, but we are going to be drafting based on that photo we got of Wolverine in his new costume for Deadpool 3. We want to take a look at what we think the rest of the X-Men will look like in the MCU. So we are going to be fan casting 4 X-Men characters. And those characters will be Charles Xavier, Magneto, Cyclops, and Jean Grey. Don't worry, for those of you barking out the names of your favorite X-Men characters, we will do more of these in the future. We'll have Jeremiah back, and we'll just kind of continue this into a long draft and, sort of cast these other characters. But we're starting off with these 4. So Jeremiah, you know how this works. This is going to be a snake draft, obviously categories. So I don't know. This could go in a lot of different directions. Do you want to
trust me, this is going to go all over. I have no backups because I'm not worried about you picking anybody that I have. So
okay, interesting, bold claim right there. Let's see how that pays off for you. What draft position do you want here? You're going to go first, second, or third?
I will go first, just so you guys go, wow, really?
Good. And I already have the order correct on my sheet. Kyle, you will have the second pick then, because I picked first last week, and then I will go third. So, Jeremiah, you picked first. Was there an immediate name for any of these characters? Did anybody come to mind right away?
No.
And let me ask you guys this real quick, too. Which one of these was the hardest to recast for you?
Not all of them, but probably Professor X, because honestly, I'm not as familiar with these characters. Like, I've seen X2. I don't think I've seen any of the other movies.
Wow.
So I will tell you that at first I was confusing Jean Grey and Rogue, so I was going a very different direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we should say too that we cannot recast. We cannot cast like the actors who have already played these characters.
Which is next to impossible for Professor X.
Exactly. Yeah.
Patrick Stewart is the only person I could think of.
Which is funny because McAvoy did a great job too, I thought. But Patrick Stewart is Charles Xavier. So yeah, that was the hardest one for me too. But did manage to put a list together. So Jeremiah, start us off here. What's your first pick going to be?
Are we going character? Or
you can go anywhere you want.
Okay. So I'm going to start with the one I think probably is my best fit. And I completely forgot it is Jean Grey. And I forgot that this person, and I had actually double checked to make sure that she hadn't done Jean Grey in any of the different roles that she has played in the Marvel universe, television and animated. Any guesses, Mac?
Television and animated?
Yes.
Oh, wait. Oh, wait, animated Marvel?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so not Ming-Na Wen.
No.
Okay. No, I don't know.
Dove Cameron.
Oh, okay. That's pretty good. I like that. I could see Dove Cameron playing Jean Grey.
Because my casting I did by age. Like if I'm casting this, I am casting, at first I was going to go younger, and then I kind of went, okay, no, we can't do younger because most of the newer people we'd talk about and they'd be like, we have no clue who these people are anyway. So I kind of settled on the classes in their late 20s, early 30s, and then.
How old is Dove Cameron? Isn't she like 27? 27. Okay, wow. All right.
Time goes by, Mac.
Yeah, I guess it does.
Trust me, I can remember seeing her at Comic-Con a few years ago. She's not that old. But I feel like she can play the good, Jean Grey fine. And then if she went Dark Phoenix, she could really nail that. And she's been in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as a villain, and she was also Spider-Gwen, and I think she did one other voice in some of the animated stuff.
Those are the two I'm aware of, so I'm not sure what other roles she might have had. But I do agree. I think, this to me is what makes Jean Grey probably the most fun of these roles to cast, is that, you have that straight character, but then also the sort of craziness of the Phoenix.
Yeah. She was in Descendants as, the bad girl. So
yeah,
she's perfect.
All right, Kyle. So now we're to you. One Jean Grey off the board. So that impact your strategy? How are you approaching this draft?
Go with the person that first came to mind that I think would be good, and I think if rumors are to be believed, has shown an interest in the role. I'm Giancarlo Esposito as Professor X. Yeah.
Giancarlo Esposito was the first name I put down. However, I had him down as a Magneto. I think he could really play that role. I think it's probably more so because I've only really seen him in villain roles more often. So, but yeah, I think he could play both. Giancarlo Esposito is fantastic. And yeah, like you said, the rumor mill is definitely heavy on that one. So, Esposito as Charles Xavier.
I did say him as C2E2 when he said he wanted to be in the Marvel Universe. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he's been interested in that, and he's a little bit of a nerd. He's already in the Star Wars universe. He's one of the stars of The Boys. So
What else?
Community.
It all has to work all around Community.
All right,
That's
so
the first time I saw him because I didn't watch Breaking Bad. So yeah, my first introduction with him was Gilbert in Community.
that might be the case for me as well because I also did not watch Breaking Bad. So Giancarlo Esposito is off the board for me because he's been picked, even if it was for a different character. You still can't cast the actor to play two different roles. So I don't know where I want to go first here. I could also get my Xavier was the hardest one. So maybe I'll just wait on that. I feel like we could be all over the place with our list. I think I'm going to go ahead and take my Cyclops because I have a favorite for Cyclops and for Jean, and I kind of want the ages to be at least close. And it would be a little bit of an age gap if I go a different direction. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Miles Teller to play Cyclops. We know Miles Teller obviously has the acting chops. He's been in films like Whiplash, where all over the Oscars. But also he's interested in those nerd roles too. So obviously having played Mr. Fantastic in a film we will never mention again on this podcast. But so he's a likable guy, which kind of has to turn that around to play Cyclops. He has to be a completely unlikable guy. But I think he could do that role pretty well. So Miles Teller is going to be my Cyclops. I feel pretty confident that my Xavier and Magneto, Giancarlo Esposito aside, won't be on your lists. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my Jean Grey. Same idea. I want an actress who can play that crazy role when we get to the Dark Phoenix storyline. So I'm going to take Anya Taylor-Joy, an actress who has played an X-Men adjacent character in Magic in the New Mutants. And kind of one of the big names in Hollywood these days. So Anya Taylor-Joy is my Jean Grey. Kyle, back to you.
Well, I mean, this, as soon as I say it, it's not going to surprise anybody. I'm going to take my Jean Grey.
John Favreau.
Alison Brie.
Alison Brie. Okay, so we are building the cast of Community. I see what Kyle is
Well,
doing.
I'll tell you now.
Remember, he doesn't know
admittedly,
anything about X-Men, so it's just like male, female characters.
if I didn't get Giancarlo, I was gonna cast Jim Rash as Professor X. Very different take on the material.
Oh man,
He's an Oscar winner.
I love that. I would love to see Jim Rash as Charles Xavier. Maybe not in the MCU, but in something. But okay, Alison Brie she's a great actress, so I do think she could play that role. And she's been popping up in a lot of stuff lately too. So yeah, I think it's Community references aside, I do think it's a good pick.
Thank you.
Jeremiah, back to you now. You've got Dove Cameron as Jean Grey. Where else are you going here?
Cyclops.
Okay.
This one, just because he can play, like, from his time on Broadway to the different movies he's been in to a TV show he's currently in, he can play every role. And I think him playing this role could be really interesting and really out of left field. Daniel Radcliffe as Cyclops.
Ooh, okay. I don't mind that. Yeah, he is kind of playing a lot of very different roles.
Yeah.
He's been one of those who's been, he doesn't want to be defined by Harry Potter. Like he's been trying to get away from that role and get into a lot of other things. So I would be interested to see if he would ever be willing. And there were a lot of rumors about him being involved in the MCU. I'd be really curious to see if he would ever be willing to do that.
I don't think he's tall enough, but I just think that he would nail the character. Like he's one of those ones that would go into the comics and research to no end, and you would go, "Oh, he knows what he's doing," just even if he doesn't fit it perfectly.
And I think he could play the role of Cyclops. He was rumored a lot for Wolverine, and I could never see that being the case. Like he just doesn't have the frame to me to be Wolverine. But I do think he could play the role of Cyclops. So I don't hate that pick. All right, now you have to get into the difficult ones. You've got to recast Patrick Stewart and or Ian McKellen here.
See, And this one, I'm kind of going with Kyle's thought of casting somebody that I love from a different show that I think would be amazing as Magneto, Wentworth Miller.
You got me on that one.
So, did you ever watch
It's my money and I need it now.
The Flash or Legends of Tomorrow?
Yes, okay.
He was wow, I can't think of his name. I want to say Sub-Zero, but that's not right. But he's been in. Yes, thank you.
Okay, to play Magneto, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, trust me. When I get to my my Professor X, she'll be like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" But he just plays the villain really well, and I think he'd be a good foil to my Professor X.
Okay. I'm interested to see where you go with that. Also, I believe he was first known, if I'm thinking of the right actor and character at least, I believe he was first known from Prison Break. That was a very popular show. So yeah. Okay, so Magneto, that's definitely a little bit of a younger Magneto, unless he's just a lot older than he looks in those shows. But
he is 51. So
he definitely looks older than that. But I mean, or he definitely is older than he looks for sure.
Yeah. And that's why I'm kind of like keeping in that age range of about a 20-year span or so.
Okay. All right. So definitely was not on my list. Did not.
Like I said, none of my people are on your list. I don't have to worry about a thing.
Now, Kyle, that was your top choice for Cyclops, I believe. So this should be a difficult one now.
Yeah, well, I'm going to hold off on Cyclops. I'm going to take my Magneto.
Joel McHale, got it. Penciled in right now.
What?
Joel McHale, penciled in already.
No, someone who I believe is around the same age as Giancarlo. And I think these two actors together, I think, would be fireworks. I'm taking Denzel.
Oh, wow. 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 So going just straight to the A-list for Magneto there. Denzel Washington. I would love to see Denzel in the MCU and honestly don't care what role it is. So, yeah, that would be interesting. Him and Giancarlo Esposito. What are their ages? Do we know?
60s. They're in their upper 60s.
Wow, I would not have guessed Denzel was that close to Giancarlo Esposito in terms of age. No,
I mean, that's what when I quickly Googled it, that's what it looked like. Who knows if it's correct?
That's fair. All right, so now I am back up to round out my draft, and I do have to recast Xavier and Magneto. And unsurprisingly, again, aside from Esposito, my lists are unaffected here. Man, this is difficult, though. I had a first name that came to mind, and then I came across another one that I thought maybe was a little bit better, but I'm going to stick to my first instinct. I'm going to take an actor who has been in the MCU already, but a long time ago, both in canon and in the actual order of the films, because he played Dr. Erskine. I'm going to take Stanley Tucci as my Charles Xavier.
That's fun.
Yeah, I mean, Tucci's great. So, and I could see him fitting the look of
Tucci gang.
I could see him fitting the look of Charles Xavier. Now I need something.
He's bald.
I may or may not have Googled bald actors at one point. I'm not sure. And The Rock was on my list at the beginning.
Give me a bigger chair.
Sure. The Rock can be an excellent brother to Professor X.
Ooh, that's not. Hey, listen. Like I said, we're gonna have some more of these in the future, so don't spoil anything right just yet.
Sequel.
All right, so now I need my Magneto, and I had a few that I liked, and actually, I'm gonna give credit to my wife on this one because she's the one who threw this name out there for me, and it kind of jumped to the top of my list. And Jeremiah, you already went to the Harry Potter universe. I'm gonna go there as well, and I'm gonna take Lucius Malfoy himself, Jason Isaacs, to be my Magneto.
I think he's a bit maniacal for me, but yeah, he could definitely do it. Like the different roles that he's played, you don't even identify him unless you actually look at his name of his other characters.
Yeah, and I don't know him from a whole lot of other roles, but I do know that he is a very accomplished actor, and I think the Lucius Malfoy, like you said, maniacal is a good word for him in that, and it would be a little bit different for Magneto. but I definitely believe that could translate well into that character.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle. So you branched out away from Community for Magneto. Are you going back to it for Cyclops?
I am not. I am going to. Just thought of a joke that I'm going to use. You guys talk about how you have to cast someone unlikable. Well, I'm going to make him likable. I'm just going to make Cyclops likable. That's my direction. And I also got this idea from my wife. So instead of Cyclops, I'm doing Cyclops because I'm taking James Roday Rodriguez.
Cyclops. You just came up with that right before you said it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to need the name again because I don't know. And I'm glad you gave me that joke because I would not have recognized it. But
he's also on A Million Little Things, which is now over at James Roday, Roday Rodriguez, but like Rodriguez, like Leonard Rodriguez.
just to plug back into Community. Got it.
You still get residual checks? Is that what's going on?
You think extras get residuals? It's so cute.
I was going to say for those who haven't, or maybe started listening to the podcast more recently, anybody other than JC, more or less. Kyle was in a few episodes of Community as an extra, so he is just plugging his show constantly here.
No, it's just that it's my favorite, and Psych is also very good. It's on Peacock. We've been watching random episodes. We've seen them all, but we're just let's watch this one and this one, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. So
I've never gotten into Psych, but I am a big Community fan as well, and that's why we have made quite a few references over the course of these 74 episodes. But before we go off on a complete tangent here, Jeremiah, last pick here. You have to draft somebody to play Charles Xavier now. Who is it going to be?
This could be the thing that I never get invited back to this podcast for.
Oh boy.
It actually involves Kyle.
You're drafting Kyle as Charles Xavier. Bold move.
That's some LeBron level stuff.
So somebody that I feel could transform into it. Like I kept thinking of Star Trek, like how some of the characters transformed into that. Jim Parsons.
Oh, okay. All right.
I can just see him doing that, like, because I want to say that he actually did it in one of the episodes of Big Bang.
Probably right.
But just his build, like, I always picture Professor X as kind of a scrawny, like,
sure,
just beanpole, and he fits it perfect. If you go watch Hidden Figures, yes, you're so used to seeing him as Sheldon, it burns in your brain. But after you get past that, he can act and he can, transform himself. And I think that could be a very interesting thing. So.
Okay. Yeah. You were almost right. I almost wanted to never invite you back on the show, but purely because of Big Bang Theory. But no, I do think that is a pretty good casting. I could see that working out as well. So.
And they've known, MCU is known for taking characters that we would never guess as a character and transforming them into all of a sudden, Wolverine, Ryan Reynolds, the people
sure,
that you don't think, but you, after 2 seconds, you're like, yes, that is perfect.
Right.
Just imagine one person bald.
You sold me on it. Just don't make me watch The Big Bang Theory. And apologies.
Kyle was in it.
All right, let me run through our final lineups here. Jeremiah has Jim Parsons as Charles Xavier, Wentworth Miller as Magneto, Daniel Radcliffe as Cyclops, and Dove Cameron as Jean Grey. Kyle has Giancarlo Esposito as Charles Xavier, Denzel Washington as Magneto, James Roday Rodriguez as Cyclops, and Allison Brie as Jean Grey. And I have Stanley Tucci as Charles Xavier, Jason Isaacs as Magneto, Miles Teller as Cyclops, and Anya Taylor-Joy as Jean Grey. Any names left on your guys' list?
Some other ones that Becca said for Jean Grey. Let me take a look at my DMs here.
She slid into those.
Yeah. Amanda Seyfried was one that she said.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
And Haley Arantia, I don't know how to say it, from the Goldbergs, Erica Goldberg.
Oh, okay. Jeremiah, what about you? Anybody else?
Nope. Because this was so difficult.
Came up with one idea for each.
It really was. Like, you guys Googled bald guys. I Googled actors in their 20s, 30s, and actors, and it was just kind of running down like, yeah, those will work.
That's fair. So I did have, like I said, I had a few others that I considered for Xavier. Bryan Cranston was the other one that I really thought could work. But then also, if I just wanted to go pure, just go for the top actor, just Daniel Day-Lewis to play Charles Xavier. I think he could absolutely make it work. Gary Oldman I had for Magneto. And neither of you guys watched Ted Lasso, right?
No.
Well, I mean, anybody listening who does watch Ted Lasso, which is probably most of you, Anthony Head, who the name of the actor probably not very familiar, but he plays Rupert Mannion on Ted Lasso, and I think he could be Magneto if it was a little bit of an older Magneto there. Chris Pine I had for Cyclops, and then fans of The Boys, Anthony Starr, who plays Homelander, just because you want somebody very unlikable to play Cyclops, so that would have been it. Evan Rachel Wood as Jean Grey, and Daisy Ridley as Jean Grey were my other options.
Nice.
Yeah, I think not giving us an age range is where we're kind of all like, if you would have said, okay, they have to be this age and this age, we probably all would have at least had one or two crossovers. But free for all, we could have done, hey, teenagers.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, you could go like the First Class type of thing. All in the Game is a few ideas here. Mark Strong. I'm not familiar with the name. I don't know if you guys are. And then the guy who plays Nate in Euphoria would be a good MCU Cyclops. I did not watch Euphoria. My wife did, so I vaguely know who that is and have a picture of him in my mind, but I'm not entirely familiar. So,
what about Dave Franco?
For Cyclops, or okay, yeah, I could see it. Not bad. I would love to get Dave Franco in the MCU. I think he's great. Jeremiah, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh wait, I want to hear Kyle's talk.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. As we wrap things up here, Kyle did have one thing he wanted to mention that I've given him just a ton of crap for over the last few weeks on the podcast. So, Kyle, you want to clear that up for us?
Yeah, so I finally saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I downloaded it on digital for $20 and watched it over the weekend. And well, first I'll say I was surprised. I guess the reason that I didn't manage to have the movie spoiled for me is that it wasn't not like there wasn't things to spoil, but I was surprised at where all the characters ended up at the end of the movie. I don't know if people haven't seen it like I hadn't until last week, so I'm being a little careful. But yeah, I think that surprised me the most about it. It also wasn't as, like I mentioned when we did we were talking about the episode, I said it might have been the most graphic, but I haven't seen Guardians because I know like the animal torture part, people talked about being graphic. I didn't think that this was, it wasn't as graphic or gory as I thought there might be a little bit. I guess the most is like kind of like the, kind of looks like Two-Face and Batman and Dark Knight.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I liked it overall. It's kind of it is, if I hadn't seen Guardians Christmas, like that would be so weird. Like it is kind of funny that they're like, oh yeah, you have to watch the holiday special in order for this to make sense, because the way it really just, takes off and you're just like, wait, where are we? She's what? Huh? And it felt a little strange at the beginning, just the way it kind of hopped from thing to thing. But then once it got going, I thought that it did well. Also, Becca compared the outfits that like Nathan Fillion and those guys were wearing. She said it looked like something out of Spy Kids, which I think is about apt.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But yeah, so I'm glad you finally got around to seeing that. And we won't go into details specifically, but now do you agree that if I had made the pick when we drafted the most memorable MCU deaths, would that have been a good pick?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I think that's definitely a recency bias that would have
maybe
factored into it. I thought you were going to, when I saw the movie, I thought you were going to try to pull something over. I'm like, well, when I said it didn't have to stick, I mean, it has to last longer than 5 minutes, or the movie, like the scene itself. But
yeah. And again, we won't go into specifics because just in case anybody watching or listening hasn't seen it yet. But
quick question: have you seen the Easter egg stories that have come out of James Gunn recently? You know how there's there's one Easter egg left.
Yeah.
And
I've not seen the story though. No, I've seen him talk about how Groot met Rocket, but that was it.
Which is tied into their bio in the first film. But people are saying that the number one Easter egg is on Rocket's profile. His affiliates, they list Layla.
All right.
But he's like, it ruined the third film, but then they're like, no way it could have happened. But yeah.
Speaking of Groot, though, I did think this isn't really a spoiler, but the scene where Groot's head is running around looks like the toy that Sid makes in Toy Story.
Yeah. Yes, it does. All right. Well, Jeremiah, now thank you for joining us again this weekend, and for sorry again for being bumped off of last week's episode. But we'll have you back again as we fan cast more of the X-Men. Maybe we get into some more villains. There's so many characters to fan cast for that. So
thank you guys very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and nice shirt.
Hey, you too. All right.
We have to go because I have to do some breaking news.
Uh-oh. Wait, you have to break news on the podcast or no?
I mean, it's not Marvel related.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Well, then thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of the Zzzax of Live podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Zzzax of Life Pod, so you can vote in the poll who you think casted the best X-Men. Anything else? Follow us follow Laughing Place on Twitter as well, laughing_place. Follow along with the Adventures by Disney trip that continues. And of course, just check out laughingplace.com for all your latest Marvel news. Oh, we do need to mention too, next week's schedule is going to be a little bit thrown off because if you're listening to this, you're probably aware next week is San Diego Comic-Con. So we will be traveling. Jeremiah and I actually will be out there for San Diego Comic-Con, as well as Mike C., who you saw on the podcast last week. So we will be out there covering all of the Marvel and Disney news. So we will have an episode. We just got to figure out when we're going to fit it in. So keep an eye out for that. Anything else, Kyle?
Nope.
All right.
Bye.
I was not ready for the outro. Hang on. Give us one more bye.
Bye.